Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Representatives from the LAPD say that a woman is in custody this week after she stole a police cruiser and led officers on a dangerous high-speed chase. While reports don't mention exactly how the incident started, we know that it began at around 1:30 p.m. on April 3rd when the police SUV was parked somewhere in the community of West Rancho Dominguez. The female suspect, who has not been identified by name at the time of this recording, proceeded to jump inside and take off in the vehicle, prompting a chase. Adding extra concern was the fact that there were apparently multiple loaded weapons in the SUV at the time. According to reports, the woman barreled eastbound down the 91 freeway, weaving dangerously between other cars. Some sources state that the chase reached top speeds of 160 miles an hour, though it's possible that this was a misprint, since it's not even clear that these kind of SUVs can go that fast. Other sources reported speeds of 100 miles an hour, which seems more believable, and let's be clear, is still extremely fast. Anyway, the chase continued into the Anaheim-Fullerton area of Orange County until the female suspect pulled into an industrial area. It was here that authorities were finally able to trap her and place her under arrest after pulling off a successful PIT maneuver. Bizarrely, it said that the woman was wearing a shirt with the word security printed on the back at the time. Currently, little additional information is available about the case. It's not clear what, if any, charges the suspect is facing, though thankfully it doesn't appear that anyone was injured as a result of the incident.
Authorities in the city of Warren, Michigan say that a local man has been arrested and is facing charges this week after he flew into a violent rage and allegedly assaulted a store employee with a rather unusual weapon. According to reports, the whole thing went down on the evening of April 2nd when the 60-year-old suspect, M.D. Jabul Hussein, walked into the Desi Fruit Market on 9 Mile Road. It was around 7:15 p.m. and Hussein had planned to do some shopping. However, things took a turn for the worse when he approached the store's fish counter and was told that it was closed. An employee apologized, saying that the fish counter closed at 7 p.m. that night due to different store hours for Ramadan. Apparently, this wasn't a good enough explanation for Hussein, who proceeded to argue with the clerk. When that failed, he allegedly picked up a 4-pound frozen herring and used it to repeatedly strike the employee in the head. While Hussein's choice of weapon was admittedly amusing, the injuries it inflicted were definitely no joke. Apparently, the employee had to be taken to the hospital after the attack. Hussein, meanwhile, was arrested and charged with misdemeanor aggravated assault. Speaking about the case after the fact, County Prosecutor Peter Lucido said, quote, "I never thought I'd have to say this, but if you assault someone with a fish in our county, you will be prosecuted. A frozen fish is dangerous if you use it to hit someone on the head."
Authorities in Floyd County, Georgia say that 2 people are dead this week after a 56-year-old man fatally shot his ex-girlfriend at a local fast food restaurant before turning his weapon on himself. The incident reportedly took place on the morning of April 5th on the property of a Chick-fil-A restaurant in the city of Rome. It was about 7 a.m., and commuters were waiting in line at the drive-thru for breakfast orders. Among them was 39-year-old mother of 7, Cassie Davis. Unbeknownst to Cassie, as she was sitting in her silver SUV, her ex-boyfriend, 56-year-old Anthony Wayne Green, had followed her into the parking lot. He got out of his vehicle and walked up to her passenger side window before pulling out a revolver and firing 3 shots. The 56-year-old then turned the gun on himself. All of it played out in front of dozens of terrified onlookers. When police were first called to the scene, the situation had been reported as a traffic accident. This is because when Cassie succumbed to her injuries, she removed her foot from the parking brake of her SUV, causing the vehicle to drive forward, hit a power box, and roll down an embankment into traffic. While thankfully no other injuries were reported as a result of the incident, sadly, Cassie was pronounced dead at the scene. While little has so far been released about the possible motive behind the crime, Cassie's mother described Green as a jealous ex-boyfriend in an interview with local media. She said that in the lead up to the shooting, Cassie had told family members that Green, quote, just wouldn't leave her alone, and that he was following her around. Cassie's friends and family members are now mourning her loss, saying it has come as a terrible blow to her 7 children. She was described as the kind of person who was everyone's friend, and someone who, quote, didn't have a mean bone in her body. At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing.
Authorities in York County, Pennsylvania say that a 25-year-old man is facing a number of charges this week after he allegedly stole a school bus and led police on a chase, only to offer quite the strange excuse when he was caught. According to reports, the incident began at around 7:10 a.m. on April 4th, when officers at the Carroll Township Police Station received a call about a stolen school bus. The bus had been reported stolen earlier that morning in Adams County, after which a be on the lookout alert had been released. The caller stated that they had now spotted the bus, which had the words Lincoln Coach Lines written on the side, driving in a parking lot in Dillsburg. When officers caught up to the bus, it was driving north on Route 15. An attempt was made to conduct a traffic stop, and though the driver initially pulled over, he sped off again soon afterwards. A chase began, during which time the suspect, later identified as 25-year-old Tony Saunders, allegedly weaved dangerously in and out of traffic and nearly overturned the vehicle. Saunders did finally stop the bus after pulling into a neighborhood in Lower Allen Township, though according to police, he still had no intention of turning himself in. Instead, he proceeded to lead them on a foot chase, at first disappearing through a wooded area before once again being spotted running through a busy parking lot. By this time, he had apparently stripped off his clothing and was completely nude. He was eventually caught and placed under arrest. Once in custody, Saunders allegedly admitted to stealing the school bus, saying that he had taken it after crashing a BMW. He also offered this bizarre excuse. He said that he had stolen the vehicle and had placed a dead deer in the back and had planned to drive the bus to his house so he could use the deer as fertilizer for his garden. Saunders has now been charged with fleeing or attempting to elude officers, receiving stolen property, reckless driving, and resisting arrest.
Authorities in the city of Newark, Delaware, say that a 22-year-old local man is in custody and facing charges after he unsuccessfully tried to carjack 2 people this week, one of whom was an off-duty police officer. According to reports, the incident began at around 8:40 p.m. on April 4th, when officers from the Newark Police Department received a call about an attempted carjacking on East Main Street. When they arrived at the scene, the male victim told them that he had been approached by an unknown man who had opened his car door and told him to get out. The man refused, leading to a short physical altercation during which the victim was able to push the suspect out of the vehicle and lock his doors. As police were taking the victim's statement, a second call came in about another attempted carjacking further down the same road. This time, things had gone even worse for the suspect. Unbeknownst to him, the victim he had chosen was an off-duty Newark police officer. When the suspect opened the car door and the officer identified himself, he turned around and ran. He didn't make it very far. The officer chased after him and was able to place him under arrest with the help of other officers who had responded to the first crime scene. The suspect was later identified as 22-year-old Mark Tannen, and the first victim was able to confirm that he was the same person who had tried to carjack him as well. Tannen has now been charged with 2 counts of second-degree attempted robbery.
Authorities in Brevard County, Florida say that a 39-year-old man is facing charges this week following a strange incident in which he was apparently denied a second turn at a local karaoke bar, and he allegedly responded by pulling out a weapon. According to reports, the incident took place at around 2 p.m. on April 2nd at Kennedy's Lamppost Tavern in Cape Canaveral. The mood was fun and exciting that afternoon, with patrons enjoying a bit of friendly karaoke. That was, until 39-year-old Travis Jordan took the stage. While we unfortunately don't know what Jordan chose for his big number, he apparently thought it was good enough that he deserved an encore. So much so that he allegedly refused to leave the stage and pulled out an 18-inch machete when he was told he couldn't have a second turn. Though most people understandably panicked at the sight of the large bladed weapon, a brave female employee at the bar reportedly managed to talk Jordan down and convince him to hand over the machete peacefully. At the same time, the police were called. When officers arrived, they could instantly tell that Jordan was very drunk. His eyes were bloodshot and glassy, he smelled of alcohol, and he was having difficulty standing. When asked about the machete, he reportedly told police that he kept it on him, quote, because he always needs to stay alert. He was taken into custody at the scene and is now facing a charge of breach of peace disorderly conduct. Following Jordan's arrest, Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey released a post on the department's Facebook page joking about the situation. In it he said, quote, "Unfortunately, Jordan's actions didn't earn him another song on stage, but they did win him a trip to Ivey's Iron Bar Lodge, where every night is open mic night, and he can sing any song he wants all night long."
Authorities in Reno, Nevada say that a woman is dead this week and 2 others are seriously injured after a 57-year-old man intentionally drove his vehicle into them outside of a local homeless shelter. The incident reportedly took place at around 6:45 p.m. on April 3rd near the Nevada Cares campus homeless shelter. 2 of the victims, mother and daughter Diamond and Clarissa Roman, were running a weekly event handing out food and clothing to those in need put on by Food Not Bombs Reno. They were just finishing up their last person of the evening when out of nowhere a Jeep came barreling towards the area where they were set up. Diamond, Clarissa, and a third woman, 55-year-old Michelle Jardine, were all struck by the vehicle, which then quickly left the scene. While Diamond and Clarissa were taken to a local hospital, sadly, Michelle died as a result of her injuries. A short time later, authorities caught up with the alleged driver of the Jeep, 57-year-old David Turner. Turner was reportedly still sitting in the vehicle in the parking lot of a nearby motel and confessed to what had happened. Disturbingly, he told officers that he had hit the victims on purpose. While Turner's exact motives are still unclear, police say that he is homeless himself and that evening had tried to access the Nevada Cares shelter but was told no beds were available. He is now facing 1 charge of open murder, as well as 2 charges of attempted murder. At the time of this recording, both Diamond and Clarissa appear to be stable, though Clarissa reportedly remains in the ICU with broken bones and a brain bleed. Authorities say that both women have a long road of recovery ahead of them.
Authorities in Marion County, Florida say that 3 young people have been arrested this week following the shooting deaths of 3 teenagers that happened at the end of last month. The incident began shortly before 11 p.m. on March 30th when police received a call about an injured person at the side of a road near the community of Silver Springs. Officers arrived to find 16-year-old Layla Silvernail, who was suffering from gunshot wounds. Witnesses said that they had heard 4 or 5 loud pops before a Chevrolet Cruze, later identified as Layla's vehicle, hit a nearby dumpster. Layla had then been seen bleeding on the ground before an unknown male got into the driver's seat and sped off. The next morning, authorities found the second victim, a 17-year-old boy, suffering from gunshot wounds a short distance away from the first crime scene. He also died from his injuries and was quickly connected to the first incident, though has yet to be formally identified. The final victim, 16-year-old Camille Quarles, was found on April 1st when Layla's Chevrolet Cruze was recovered from a pond. Her remains were discovered in the vehicle's trunk, and it was determined that she had died of gunshot wounds just like the other 2 victims. While the 3 murders in rapid succession were disturbing, authorities announced within days that they had no reason to believe that there was a serial killer on the loose, instead describing the situation as an isolated incident. That was followed by an update on April 7th with the news that 2 arrests had been made in the case. The suspects were identified as 17-year-old Robert LaAndrew Robinson and 12-year-old Christopher Dell Atkins. It's now alleged that the 3 teenage victims had actually been hanging out with Robinson, Atkins, and another 16-year-old named Taj Bruton on the night of March 30th, and that all of them had been committing crimes together. Investigators say that following their arrests, Robinson and Atkins confessed to what had happened, stating that they had began their crime spree that night by robbing an unidentified male victim around 6:30 p.m. The man had apparently agreed to buy a gun through a friend of one of the victims, but when he got into Layla's vehicle, he was instead violently robbed. The group had then driven around Marion County, planning to rob someone else, but at some point, things had turned deadly. Atkins allegedly told police that Bruton shot Layla and the unidentified 17-year-old victim, causing the dumpster crash which had been observed by witnesses. Afterwards, the 12-year-old claimed that Bruton had forced him to shoot Camille, threatening that if he didn't do it, his own family would be harmed. He went through with it, after which he, Bruton, and Robinson allegedly dumped all of the victims' bodies and disposed of Layla's vehicle. While it appears that police are still investigating the full circumstances behind the triple shooting, authorities have since suggested that the suspects may have turned on the victims to avoid getting caught for the earlier crimes that they had committed together. Marion County Sheriff Billy Woods himself stated, quote, "Basically, simple terms, there was no honor among thieves." However, it's unclear if there was more to the story. Robinson and Atkins have now been charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder. Bruton, meanwhile, was arrested in Lake County on April 8th following a manhunt. He was taken into custody on outstanding warrants for a number of offenses, though it's expected that more charges will follow. At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.